When it comes to major 1980s franchises, there's a strange relationship that exists between Ghostbusters and Back to the Future. Despite being a year apart, they're often brought up in the same conversations as companion pieces of the era that was the 80s. That relationship might be unconsciously founded in the fact that both the 1984 Ghostbusters film and 1985's Back to the Future were aggressively successful sci-fi comedies at the box office that captured the imaginations of adults and children alike. Yet with those children, the studios seemed ill-prepared to provide merchandise and left millions of dollars on the table as a result. Ghostbusters would catch up with kids with the real Ghostbusters cartoon in 1986. That would leave a successful multi-season series and a slew of Kenner toys in its wake, even though the studio never did merchandise the original 1984 film with any toys for children. Meanwhile, Back to the Future, despite two equally successful movie sequels, never quite figured out how much kids wanted related toys and other merchandise. In the wake of Back to the Future 2, the studio only managed a few Micro Machines-style toys and an impressive DeLorean Power Wheel for very young children that few kids ended up with. But beyond that, Back to the Future remained a series that 80s kids were obsessed with, yet had nothing aside from some crappy Nintendo games to remember it by. So it's almost perfect poetry that at the same time Playmobil chose to produce a Ghostbusters range with the lion's share of items based on the neglected original film, they also decided to open the floodgates for Back to the Future and produce a range of toys that finally delivered some justice to a movie that defined the 1980s, yet oddly found its merchandising potential lost to time.
In about 30 years? I hope so.
Playmobil, a mainstay toy brand founded in 1974 and, like Lego, a major presence in toy aisles in the 1980s when we were kids, has brought its signature style to Back to the Future. Initially, I assumed based on their original announcement that they would mirror Lego's modest ambitions with a rendering of the DeLorean time machine and figures of Marty and Doc Brown, and that would be it. This isn't atypical for Back to the Future merchandising in the era of adult toy collectibles. Companies either merchandise the characters or the DeLorean, and oddly next to never bring these two things together. Diamond Select made several versions of the time machine, but never produced figures for it. Super 7 has made reaction retro figures of the main characters from the films a few times over the years, but has yet to produce a time machine of its own. NECA made highly detailed figures from the films, but only made a DeLorean that was much smaller in scale. Meanwhile, high-end collectible companies like Hot Toys have made massive DeLorean time machines in scale with their relatively few 12-inch figures, but that's a rare and expensive outlier. There has also been the newly released Tomy Time Machine replica, but there are no figures to accompany this version. So you can imagine my surprise when Playmobil announced multiple products focused on the Back to the Future trilogy. To say Playmobil is the only toy company brave enough to attempt a world build of Back to the Future is hardly an understatement. The range understandably began with the iconic DeLorean time machine. Unlike other licensees in the past, Playmobil made sure to have the rights to the DMC logos for the vehicle, which is a really nice bit of added value. Playmobil didn't go a generic route with this, where they merely mashed up a bunch of Back to the Future tropes. No, they did their homework as always. The DeLorean time machine set is specific to the opening of the original Back to the Future. The vehicle is engineered with the plutonium chamber and the lightning rod and hook for the final clock tower scene.
We've outfitted the time vehicle with this big pole and hook.
The vehicle incorporates a really nice blue LED lighting scheme to simulate the 88 mph effect, and doesn't forget to include a functioning flux capacitor on the rear bulkhead of the interior cabin, which is fully detailed. It is frustrating that Playmobil's packaging in the box sometimes results in scratches on the clear windshield of their vehicles, and the DeLorean is no exception. The results are truly hit and miss in this regard. I also kind of wish the headlights would function and that the taillights weren't a sticker, but those are small gripes. As with so many things Playmobil, you'll spend a lot of time placing decals during assembly. It's a pain, but take your time. The decals are good quality and really look sharp when the car is completed. When the vehicle was originally released, it was strange to learn they'd incorporated the rotating suspension in the wheels to allow the DeLorean to go into hover mode, when the rest of the set didn't reflect that version of the time machine. Little did we know, Playmobil had a plan in motion, and they'd, pardon the phrasing, future-proofed this toy for their intended ambitions. Alongside the time machine, Playmobil included Marty in his classic outfit of his denim jacket with the proper cuffs and puffy vest with his skateboard complete with proper Valterra logo and the JVC camcorder he famously uses in the mall parking lot scene.
Come on, let's get you a radiation suit. We must prepare to reload.
The camera is simply a repaint of the same one used in the Ghostbusters Firehouse playset, but it's nice they gave it a deco change to bring it closer to the JVC Marty carries. You can also tell the designers at Playmobil are huge fans of Doc Brown, and maybe that's because Playmobil is a German company and they take pride in one of their own.
The Browns didn't come to Hill Valley until 1908, and then they were the Von Brauns.
Whatever the reason, Doc gets a really good figure with the proper hair, both wristwatches, and his equipment belt complete with tool bag, the stopwatch around his neck, and the remote control for the DeLorean.
Get that thing hooked up to the car.
Watch this.
I'm not sure why they gave this figure short rolled sleeves and then just painted his lower arms white when they could have used more traditional straight arms. That was a weird choice. Lastly, there's Doc's doggy, Einstein. And while I admit he looks a little more Benji than Einstein, Playmobil did make sure to tampo the stopwatch around his neck, which is some crazy good devotion to detail.
Einstein's clock is exactly 1 minute behind mine and still ticking.
And if that wasn't enough, you also get the plutonium case with 3 plutonium rods that can be exchanged out of the time machine's fuel chamber. It's a really nice toy set. The figures fit perfectly inside the DeLorean. Well, except Einstein, sadly, due to his lack of articulation. And unlike most Playmobil vehicles, they wisely understood that the gull-wing doors of the DeLorean are a major part of its identity. So instead of having a removable roof section to put the figure in, like so many of their vehicles, Playmobil engineered the gull wings as they should be. And it honestly rocks. I don't think it's out of bounds to say that Playmobil has managed to make the best DeLorean time machine toy of all time. Others might have slightly better proportions or a lot more detail, but most don't have figures to go with them. Some are missing the DMC badges, some are way too expensive to be considered toys, and the bang you get for your buck here really does take you back in time when you experience it. It was with the next major set from Back to the Future Part 2 that I started to see Playmobil's intentions, and simultaneously realized the situation I would personally be in given my level of enthusiasm for Back to the Future. The small playset depicts the Hill Valley Square hoverboard chase between Marty and Griff. This set is probably my least favorite in the Playmobil range, but it has so many crucial accessories, it's essential. How can it be mid and be essential at the same time? Well, allow me to explain. The set is literally a small pond with a section of pavement that is supposed to represent the reflecting pool in the center of Hill Valley in 2015. So it's an undersized kiddie pool effectively with a selection of landscaping foliage clumped in one corner, with 2 signs, one for Jaws 19, the hit film in 2015, and the other advertising Wilson hover conversions. The signs are nice, but they're just, well, signs. You also have a Hill Valley lamppost and 2 clear hockey puck things. Since you don't get a Hill Valley clock tower or any building frontage, this little duck pond is just that, a puddle of plastic. Included with the pond is a Hill Valley police hoverbike and the policewoman we see later in the film who delivers Jennifer back to her future home.
Have a nice day, Mrs. McFly.
She comes with a pair of handcuffs, her gloves, and a futuristic nightstick. The hoverbike is nicely engineered and good quality, with the lifting side wings and perfectly fits any Playmobil figure. Next up is Griff, with his weird helmet, his automatic bat, and his pit bull hoverboard. It's a shame his 3 companions weren't also included, but I guess it wasn't in Playmobil's budget. Here's where those clear hockey pucks come in. They're meant to allow you to place figures on hoverboards over the water for display. Unfortunately, there's nothing that locks the board to the puck, so it's purely for static display on very stable surfaces. It gives off the illusion, but it's a bit of a cheat. Alongside Griff is Marty in his 2015 attire with that memorable cap, his Mattel hoverboard, and Gray's Sports Almanac.
Marty!
I can't lose.
Marty, up here!
Rounding out the included figures is Doc Brown in his 2015 clothing with his yellow trench coat and mirrored visor. Once again, he gets both his wristwatches as well as both a short and a long version of his coat that you can switch out so he can sit in the DeLorean time machine. It's the remaining accessories where this whole situation gets interesting. Doc is given the DeLorean's future license tag along with the Mr. Fusion and another conversion piece to allow you to swap out the parts and convert the time machine to its Part 2 appearance. Oddly though, the license tag is a separate accessory that characters can hold, with a dedicated decal for one side of it to depict that orange barcode appearance. This stopped me in my tracks. It didn't make sense to me to waste that decal on an orange piece of plastic when it needs to go on the DeLorean, but I didn't want to permanently change the look of my Part 1 time machine. Admittedly, I was torn on Playmobil's move. On the one hand, I have to praise Playmobil for not forcing you to buy a distinctly different time machine toy to get these versions of the characters and the different DeLorean parts. I suspect a lot of people weren't going to want to swap out DeLorean parts very often. Everyone has their preferred configuration. On the other hand, the biggest fans like seeing all versions of the time machine on display side by side, and I am no exception. So I went ahead and bought 2 more DeLoreans, because I had a feeling Playmobil wouldn't leave it at Part 2. I placed the futuristic license tag sticker over the plate on the back of the second DeLorean's rear clip and installed the Mr. Fusion parts. A surprise highlight of the hoverboard set is this lenticular Playmobil recreation of the USA Today newspaper that reverts to show how Marty changed the future. An amazing inclusion that I never expected, but that was just the start of many surprises. Playmobil announced a Back to the Future themed advent calendar. The set amounted to a series of compartments for each day leading up to Christmas where a new accessory was revealed in each cubby, all of them focused on the original Back to the Future film. It starts with a large cardstock facade of the 1955 Hill Valley Courthouse and Clock Tower. While cardstock isn't exactly the most fun prospect, at least it's somewhat three-dimensional when built, and comes with the lightning rod with electrical effect at the top of the clock tower, a zip line for Doc to slide down, and a section of the street in cardstock with pavement on either side, a 1950s-style lamppost with an electrical pole on the opposite side of the street, and the conducting cable crossing the span, with flames from the DeLorean on the ground. You also get Doc Brown in his 1955 look, with the electrical gloves and the note and envelope given to him by Marty to warn him about the future.
What's the meaning of this?
Marty from 1955 is included with the plain wood skateboard and a 1955 version of Biff to chase him. Plus, you get a wooden sign hyping the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. There are a number of revisits here as well, specifically Marty and Doc in the parking lot of Twin Pines Mall, now including the sign for the mall itself, which when turned around becomes Lone Pine Mall with adjusted timestamp. Impressive work on Playmobil's part. Doc is the same as the figure from the DeLorean set, except now he has a head to accommodate the radiation hood. Marty, while from the same scene, is an all-new figure with the yellow radiation suit and hood, complete with orange radiation gloves, the video camera, and a loose version of the out-of-time license tag, which is a nice touch.
Ah, Jesus Christ.
He also comes with his silver Walkman, which is a recolored version of Doc's stopwatch accessory from the DeLorean set, the hairdryer from Doc's luggage, and a copy of George's sci-fi magazine, so he can ostensibly terrorize George at some point as Darth Vader from the planet Vulcan.
Who are you?
The set also features the Hill Valley Square bench with Marty and Jennifer Parker. For this version of Marty, he's wearing the mirrored aviators and is in the denim jacket minus the vest, and comes with the yellow guitar and his backpack from the very beginning of the film. The guitar is just a recolored Playmobil accessory and not a new sculpt, which is a bit of a letdown. However, given that they provide Doc Brown's ridiculously large sound system, you can't be too irritated. He also comes with the flyer to save the clock tower, complete with Jennifer's phone number and message on the other side. Jennifer Parker is a standout in this set, in her correct jacket and jeans with her purse and her binder and books from school. And in a great inclusion, Playmobil included a lenticular photo recreation of Marty and his siblings where you can watch them disappear.
Erased from existence.
It is something of a shame Playmobil didn't fix 1985 Doc's arms for this revisit, and they didn't provide him his yellow radiation gloves despite Marty getting his orange pair. That aside, they provided so much Back to the Future material here that I never thought we'd see in action figure form from any toy line that it more than makes up for the omission. There's no doubt the Playmobil staff had a love for Back to the Future. It's right here in your face. The next release was one I truly didn't see coming. Marty's pickup truck that makes an appearance in each film.
Check out that 4x4. That is hot.
I do understand this Playmobil truck is very different in a lot of ways from the actual Toyota truck in the films. However, given all of the work they had to do making the DeLorean, I'm in disbelief they even bothered to get a truck from elsewhere in their line and deck it out to resemble Marty's at all. As far as an overall impression, it really nails the vibe. In the strictest sense, this is a Back to the Future Part 1 set. Or possibly the opening of Part 2. Marty is in his suspenders and Shaw Safari shirt. Jennifer is redone in her end-of-film attire with her purse, and it's up to you if that's actress Claudia Wells or Elizabeth Shue.
How about a ride, mister?
How about a ride, mister?
We also get 1985 Biff this time, with his polishing chamois and spray bottle. With real rubber tires and access to the engine as well as an opening tailgate, this truck is a really fun inclusion for mega fans of the trilogy. Playmobil also released a figure 2-pack of Marty and Doc from 1955. In this set, Doc is pretty much his 1955 version again, except this time with the Save the Clock Tower flyer. Marty, on the other hand, is all new, as he looked during the Enchantment Under the Sea dance in his Zoot suit with the red guitar.
Watch me for the changes and try and keep up, okay?
It's a nice little set, but I desperately wish Playmobil would have expanded this to 4 figures as they did with the Ghostbusters, because that would have been the perfect opportunity to provide George and Lorraine, who we unfortunately never received despite having a Marty with the hairdryer and radiation suit. It's a major omission from the range that can now only be achieved through kit bashing other Playmobil figures into those characters. Fortunately, with half a century of figures at our disposal, the possibilities are very much doable. The last major item in Playmobil's Back to the Future line was a second advent calendar a year later, this time focusing entirely on Back to the Future Part 3, as none of the standard sets took advantage of this theme, which is interesting given Playmobil's long and successful history with Old West-themed toys. The first major difference between this advent set and the first one is instead of a big centerpiece cardstock facade, it contains a series of 4 small vignettes. One is the under construction clock tower in forced perspective with the new clock on display. The second is the drive-in movie theater in 1955. The third is the mine outside the old graveyard. And finally, the train platform out of Hill Valley. There's a lot of bang for your buck with this one if you're a completist that likes Part 3. Which I am. Firstly, we get Marty and Doc in their 1955 drive-in movie theater outfits. Marty is in his Roy Rogers-style cowboy clothes, with the letter Doc wrote him from 1885, and Doc is in his straw trilby and yellow shirt with revolver. In addition, we get Copernicus with his mining helmet, dynamite and plunger to blast out the entrance of the mine, a desert cactus, a lantern, and Doc Brown's tombstone. We also get Clara in her end-of-movie costume with luggage bag, as well as a figure of Buford Mad Dog Tannen.
You're Mad Dog Tannen.
And Playmobil pulled out all the stops on this one. The set provides him with a revolver, gun belt, lasso, and an entire horse.
I done shot that horse! Well, that's your problem, Tannen!
Doc Brown is back, now in his iconic Part 3 Western costume, complete with his custom long rifle, which Playmobil appears to have tooled up especially for this set. while Marty is again included as well, this time in his own 1885 Western wear. Unfortunately, it's not as accurate as Doc's. Marty does have the stove door on his chest and a poncho clips on over it. He also has his gun belt and revolver. Oddly though, like with 1985 Doc Brown, they put him in rolled up short sleeves when he should be in long sleeves. But it should have been easy to get tan arms with long sleeves considering Doc Brown is already using a pair himself. This Doc and Marty pairing also comes with the antique bellows camera, their framed photo from the festival, and the 3 special fire starters Doc throws into the boiler of the locomotive at the climax of the film. However, it's the final pieces of this set that make it impossible to pass up. Playmobil has provided you with the final parts of the DeLorean time machine to assemble either the 1955 white wall tires version or the configuration with the rail wheels during the final chase scene. Additionally, the set provides the massive 1955 replacement microchip Doc attaches to the bonnet of the DeLorean. The instructions for attaching the chip box require the use of provided adhesive dots. It was at this point I realized my instinct to buy 3 of the DeLoreans paid off. Not being a fan of the final version of the DeLorean with the rail wheels, and seeing that as a sub-variant of the Part 3 configuration anyway, I took my 3rd DeLorean and prepared to make it the time machine's final form under its own power. Unfortunately, I realized immediately that I only had the one Mr. Fusion and no extra decals for that future license tag. That required the purchase of a second Part 2 hoverboard chase set. This might seem superfluous, but not only did it allow me to secure the parts and decals needed for the 3rd version of the DeLorean, but between the 3 DeLorean sets and the 2 hoverboard chase sets, I now had a ton of options to correct various characters. First up was getting one of those 1955 Doc Browns and swapping his arms over to 1885 Marty, which greatly improves his overall look. Now with 3 Twin Pines Mall Docs and 2 2015 Docs, I was able to permanently give one Doc the short coat and glasses for driving the DeLorean, while the other got the long coat and no visor for all of the scenes where he's not in the time machine. One of the 1985 Martys was head swapped with the 2015 Marty to allow for a hatless future Marty, since he wasn't wearing the cap during the hoverboard chase. I also found I now had a good number of plutonium cylinders to fill up that storage case nicely. It was then I realized if I just had the parts from a second original advent calendar, I could really do some damage. I bought a second Part 1 advent calendar and got to work. With those pieces, I was able to get a Marty in the radiation suit without hat head, so he could drive the DeLorean for the Twin Pines Mall sequence. I also had the parts to do a Marty without the vest and without the sunglasses, as he actually looked with Jennifer in Hill Valley Square. This also provided me with multiples of certain accessories like Marty's Walkman, so both his 1985 version and his radiation suit version could gear up. Having multiple hoverboards allowed for the Part 3 DeLorean to have the hoverboard in the passenger seat.
Hoverboard, all right.
While that pile of gear from the original Time Machine sets allowed for a video camera in the passenger seat of the Part 1 Time Machine alongside the Walkman. And now both Radiation Suit Marty and 1985 Vested Marty could have camcorders. I am disappointed there was never a cardstock facade of the 2015 Hill Valley Courthouse provided to bring that hoverboard chase set to life. And I would have preferred an 1885 courthouse facade over the smaller vignettes if we had to settle for cardstock over plastic playsets. I'm presently considering trying to add a VW bus and kit bash together some Libyans for the whole thing, possibly even mocking up Doc Brown's utility van somehow. It would also be great to have the Hill Valley locomotive, but the Playmobil Western locomotive is cost prohibitive, and that would also require a 4th DeLorean, a 3rd hoverboard set, and a second Part 3 advent calendar. So yeah, I'm not going to indulge in that level of OCD and financial ruin. Just looking at the 3 DeLoreans with their proper drivers that I was able to put together made all of this worth it. The extent Playmobil went to in the service of Back to the Future is incredible. As nice as it would have been to get Biff's car or more characters like George, Lorraine, Strickland, Needles, and Goldie Wilson, what was made went beyond anything I thought I'd ever see after 35 years of basically nothing. And maybe that's the way it goes for anything Back to the Future. Just as Playmobil got this toy line up to 88 miles per hour, it vanished.